ask you to stand, please, while we have the invocation and also the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Charlie Miller. Dear Father, we come here tonight once again thanking you that we have a country in which we can have a free public school system, that all of our children are allowed to be educated. And as those that are in leadership, we would just ask, Lord, that you always give us the wisdom to make the right decisions. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to learn and prepare ourselves as we go to different seminars. Thank you that we have the opportunity to represent the children of this county, a very high privilege. Father, we would ask you to be this week with those who have lost their friends and their families, their neighbors, brothers and sisters, through the terrible situations in which their lives have been taken needlessly. We ask you, Father, that you be with them tonight. We thank you for our America and ask you to give us the wisdom and strength always to fight for the values that we hold so dear. In Jesus' name, amen.
Join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair, it's time for board salutes, and I would invite the board to join me in the well, at which time I'll introduce our new principals and their families. Board members, it's my pleasure this evening to introduce 5 new principals, and I'll call them up one at a time, and if you, new principal, would come forward and bring any family members that are accompanying you this evening. And first of all, I'd like to introduce the new principal at Supply Elementary, Ms. Kelly Andrews. Ms. Andrews. Ms. Andrews attended East Carolina University and UNC Wilmington. She has served as a resource teacher, assistant principal, and principal of 2 elementary schools in Wilson County. The Andrews family has recently relocated to our area, and we are delighted to have an excellent and experienced person to take over the helm at Supply. Ms. Andrews, who do you have with you this evening?
This is my daughter, Julie Andrews. She's a senior at UNCW.
UNCW, welcome.
Senior, we used to be a senior too.
Very good.
Senior in communication studies and media.
Well, please know that we're very glad to have you as a new member of the Brunswick Schools family.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Walker Constantinesco, please come forward, and your family. Walker is a familiar face. Walker attended college at UNC Wilmington. She has served as a 3rd grade teacher in New Hanover County and assistant principal at Town Creek since it opened in 2009, and she assumes the principalship of Town Creek Elementary. Who do you have with you this evening, Walker?
My husband Jimmy and my son Tyler, who is also a senior at UNCW, majoring in criminal justice.
Welcome to you, and Walker, we wish you the very best. Congratulations, and we know that Town Creek is in good hands.
Absolutely.
And next would Shirley Williamson come forward and family. Ms. Williamson is the new principal at Virginia Williamson Elementary School. She attended college at UNC Pembroke and UNC Wilmington. She has served in Brunswick County Schools as a middle grades teacher, curriculum support specialist, and assistant principal at Belleville Elementary, and she will now serve as the leader of Virginia Williamson Elementary. And I happen to recognize her husband, who's with her tonight, as he is the superintendent in Hope County Public Schools. So we're glad to have you with us, Mr. Williamson. Ms. Williamson, congratulations, and we are so proud to have you at Virginia Williamson. David Ruth and family. David Ruth is the new principal at South Brunswick Middle School. He attended college at UNC Pembroke and in Provo, Utah. He has served as an elementary teacher, curriculum specialist, and assistant principal at Waccamaw School, Virginia Williamson Elementary, and South Brunswick Middle School. And Mr. Ruth, who do you have with you this evening?
I have my much better half, my wife Joanne, and my daughter Lincoln, who's a 10th grader, going to the 10th grade at South High, and my son Matthew, who just graduated at South High.
Welcome, everyone. And Mr. Ruth, we congratulate you and happy to have you at South Brunswick Middle. And finally, Mr. Brock Aarons, please come forward.
My family said I was on my own. They're on their way here.
Mr. Aarons is the principal at West Brunswick High School. He attended college at St. Mary's in California and served as assistant principal and principal in California at elementary and junior high school, and has served as assistant principal at West Brunswick High School and most recently as principal at South Brunswick Middle School. So Brock, we are very happy to have you take over the helm at West Brunswick High School, where you have served before and know the faculty and the community and even some of the students. So we know that you will take them to even greater heights, and congratulations.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Get this back up. The next thing on our agenda is our public address. The first person is Ms. Laura Hunter, our Teacher of the Year.
Let Mr. Green do the rules.
Excuse me just a minute. I'm told that I'm going to have to let Mr. Green tell us what our policies are as far as public speaking.
Yes, it's a board policy that presentations will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Discussions regarding particular individual employees, litigation, student records, or other matters which may be required to be kept confidential may not be discussed in the open forum setting. The chairperson will have the responsibility to determine matters of discussion that may be inappropriate and rule the speaker out of order if necessary. You may begin.
Thank you. Well, for those of you who don't know me in the audience, my name is Laura Hunter, and I have the privilege of being a voice for teachers this year in Brunswick County. And that is why I'm standing in front of you guys again. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about perspective, which I've gotten a lot of this summer. So to start with, I want to talk about inspirational posters, because in education we love inspirational posters. If you go into any school, you'll see right up on the principal's walls some kind of landscape picture with an inspirational saying underneath. I am not a fan of inspirational posters, but there's one that I really, really love, and you might have seen it. It's a poster with a gumball machine, and inside the gumball bubble is completely empty. And then if you scan down, the little part where you put the money in is also empty, but gushing out of the trapdoor are all of the gumballs. And the caption is, "The universe is conspiring to make you happy." And I love that because it's about perspective, isn't it? So I have gotten an opportunity to get a unique perspective about Brunswick County Schools leadership this summer, because I've been invited to participate in some leadership activities, perhaps not as an active participant, although if you know me, you know that I sometimes take an active role, but certainly as an observer. So I want to talk a little bit about that in light of our recent report from the Advanced Ed piece, and talk about kind of my perspective on that. First, let me say that I started the summer being invited to participate in the strategic vision planning meeting with some of you folks. And that was a great opportunity for me to see Dr. Pruden and Ms. Swinsky in action, kind of corralling the troops, as it were, and getting us on board with developing a vision, maybe even a structure for what that vision looks like. It was really fabulous for me to see everybody's perspective about what they want out of Brunswick County Schools. That's something that I don't get to see very often from the vantage point of my classroom. And so it was unique for me to hear from all of these different varied voices about what it is that we do that meets their needs, or perhaps doesn't meet their needs. I want to applaud Dr. Pruden and Ms. Swinsky and everybody that participated, because those dialogues were valuable and I think productive in some regards. I also got an opportunity to travel to Newport with the Common Core team that is charged with helping roll out new curriculum for the county this year. I know that you guys know that this is the first time in 30 years that North Carolina is rolling out curriculum across the spectrum, K through 12th grade, which is an amazing task. So I got an opportunity to participate with that group, and what I saw was, A, this is an amazing task that we are undertaking, but B, everybody from other counties that I got to have a dialogue with was giving me feedback that Brunswick County Schools is a little bit ahead of the game when it comes to getting our heads into what this new curriculum rollout should look like and how we communicate that to our staff. And that was an important perspective for me to get as a teacher. Sometimes I don't feel like that, but when I look at where other counties are, I felt a lot better. Last week I got an opportunity to participate with the school improvement team event at the Realtors Building in Supply. 19 schools are there working together to develop their strategic vision for their own school, their school improvement plan. And I've sat at the table on occasion with my school, but I got an opportunity to walk around and listen to what other schools were doing. And I've got to say, it was amazing to hear people be honest about their school's strengths and weaknesses, to look with clean, fresh eyes at where they need to go this year and in the future to make their schools meet the needs of their student body better. It was heartening to see teacher leaders given a voice at that table to help shape that vision. It was fabulous. I don't know, because I have not been involved in the school improvement plan event for a while in Brunswick County Schools, but that was an incredible experience. If that was the first time we've done that, we should do that again. I don't really know if that is the first time, but it was good stuff. So I think think that Brunswick County Schools is conspiring to make me happy as a teacher. I love what I'm seeing. I think that we have taken the feedback that we've gotten from advanced ed and are starting to really see that communication is important.
I'm sorry, I've got to call time.
Perfect, thank you. I think you got the message.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Aaron's family came in, I think.
Excuse me.
Mr. Aaron's family. Please rise and introduce your family.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You got that stand up? This is my wife Lizzie, cheerleading and soccer, so this is the one that keeps it all here together. My oldest daughter Haley, who's actually a senior at Harvard, daughter Natalie, who's a sophomore in New Hanover, who we play on Friday. My son Bryce, he's in 7th grade at Rolling Rice.
Thank you all for coming.
Next, we have Amanda Brown for public address.
So my name's Amanda Brown. I'm married with 3 children. One's an 8-month-old, so this doesn't apply. I have a rising kindergarten child and one rising to 3rd grade. I'm here tonight to speak about the school uniform policy. Although my child has adhered to the school policy for 3 years now, starting at Town Creek since it opened, I've expressed my concern and opposition to the school uniform policy since day one. I've spoke with Miss Helen Davis, previous principal, every year in regards to the policy, and at this time I wish to escalate that concern to you guys. Doing some research, policy 4316 states the Brunswick County Board of Education respects a student's right to choose his or her style of dress or appearance if adhering to the standards of dress. Town Creek, Lincoln, Belleville, and Leland Middle School students and parents alike, I feel, had their rights removed when the uniform policy went into effect. My utmost concern with the uniforms is the lack of choice, the lack of self-expression, and most certainly the cost. While a typical uniform averages $20, Walmart attire going on up to $30, this is certainly, you know, an additional cost and to consider. You have to consider the cost of the uniform itself. Sending a child, you know, that's $100 a week on average, in addition to normal clothes. You know, simply put, child's not going to wear school uniform for the most part outside of school. So clothing expenses have more than doubled since the uniform has come into effect. And for me, that's just going to, you know, double again with the second child going to elementary school. In addition, I do not believe students should be branded based on where they live. With the uniform policy only in effect for the 4 northern Brunswick County schools, I question the validity of the reason for the uniforms. There were several reasons that were given as a positive to the uniforms, to include to reduce the gang activity, prevent intruders, that sort of thing, and which doesn't necessarily apply too much at this elementary level. And then policy 4318 states the Brunswick County Board of Education believes the safe and disciplined learning environment is the first requirement of a high-performing school. This policy is in regards to the school uniform. The 3 elementary schools who have adopted the policy had an overall performance rating of 80.97 and below, as opposed to Union Elementary, who we all know is not on school uniforms. They had a rating of 92.11. The same statistics hold true when comparing that of Leland Middle School to South Brunswick Middle School. Leland Middle School had ratings of 71.72% with 84.62% for South Middle. So I'm here today to express not only my opposition, but the fact that if school uniforms were put in place for the best interest of the students, I question why the policy was not mandated countywide. Belleville's webpage states that the board is currently reviewing the uniform policy, but it will not be in effect this year. And I stand in for other parents and students alike who were opposed to the school uniforms. I asked for the school uniform policy at Town Creek Elementary also to be reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Ray Gilbert.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members, administration. You perhaps thought I was coming tonight to talk to you about our annual performance, but I actually didn't come to talk to you about that. I think time will weigh that out. But I wanted to share some ideas with this board that I believe will help us in terms of strengthening our governance and leadership areas where we didn't quite make the mark that perhaps you desired. One is to hold district area meetings throughout the county, and this is something different than having your PAC meetings. I don't know who all represents your PAC. I don't know if you read the minutes of your PAC. I read the minutes of a few of them, and it's clueless to me as to what's going on in our schools. So having those community forums where parents could come to your meetings, meet with the board members, I think would be a strength to help you connect with the community. Utilize local business contractors for services and projects, and please consider hiring from within. I think you've done a great job with some of your appointments of principals from within our school district. I would ask that you take a serious look at the policy that allows administrators to live outside the county. I think it is common that we begin the process of requiring those who are administrators in our county to live in our county. So I would ask the board to consider that. One of the biggest concerns that I have is that in reading the report, site-based management and accountability was left out. Hire good principals, tell them to run the schools, free up the superintendent to let him manage, and free up the principals to run their schools. But at the end of the day, tell those principals they're held accountable for what's going on. I noticed also that board members, please increase your visits to the school. Some of the schools got 1 or 2 visits from you this year, and I know we're all busy, but please try to increase your visits to the school. And if law permits, ride the buses, serve in the cafeteria, volunteer in the classroom, go out on the playgrounds, attend PTA, PTO meetings, listen to the community. In terms of some cost-saving idea, cut the board salary starting next month, 25%. If it's a tight pinch, cut the board's salary. Consolidate positions, programs, and review salaries. I recall earlier that there was a director at the central office who had 7 programs under them. When they left, everybody got an individual program. So I'm not sure what was the reason behind that. If one person could hold down 7 programs, why can't we hire good people to hold down those programs as well? Promote employees who care about students. One of the problems that I've always had with public education or private education is every child deserves a friendly smile when they walk through those doors. And if you're talking about turning around test scores, you greet those students and their parents with a friendly smile, and that will go a long ways. Partnership with our businesses and communities. Let's boost morale of the employees. And this is a must. I don't want my children nor any other children to go to school with unhappy employees. And I know a lot of people are talking about pay raises and money, but money is not the only incentive that I think we can do to increase the morale in Brunswick County. Next, work toward a nurse at each school. It baffles my mind why we don't have a nurse at all 19 schools, and particularly why we can't have a nurse at all of our elementary schools, where we have children who are more prone to accidents. Implement a new best practice model for teachers and ideas pages on your website. I went to the website recently and I was wondering, how do you communicate with the Board of Education other than email? But we perhaps should set up some kind of portal where you can have a best practices, good ideas, and even among the teachers. Let them put together some best practices. There is a phenomenal 3rd grade teacher in Brunswick County that I will put up against all the other county districts in North Carolina. I think she is phenomenal. She does things that is exciting. When the students are ready to take their test, instead of them getting all nervous about the test, they bring in board games from the house to relax their nerves. And she has fun. And she teaches those students in her class. By far in the 3rd grade outpaced all of the other district schools. Next, common sense approach to education. You're not going to make everybody happy, board members. I continue to pray for you and administration for what you do. You've been given an enormous task, but I simply ask you, just consider what's going on in our county. Regardless of the mixed messages from the latest test scores to advanced ed, that's not my major issue right now. You as a board sit in a position to impact the lives of 3 important people to me. I have children at every grade level, from elementary, middle school, and high school this school year. And I want to see them be productive and be good citizens. And I expect from you board members, and I pray for you, let's do what we need to do to keep our schools moving in the right direction. God bless you, and I pray for each and every one of you and your families. Be blessed.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Mr. Tom Simmons.
Board, Dr. Pruden. I've got two issues that I want to discuss with you tonight. One, I want to follow up the discussion that Ms. Hunter and there's two eloquent speakers last month on staff morale. As I listened to those ladies speak and I was watching the faces on the dais up here, I couldn't help but feel that some of you were a little shocked that morale was low in our system. I have to tell you, morale is as low as I've seen it in a long time, and I've been around in the system and working with the system for 35 years or more. But it goes deeper than just the ability to go to NCAT. While I believe strongly in NCAT, I'm an NCAT attendee myself, this morale problem is deeper than that. And when I talk to folks, they tell me that they feel overstressed, overworked, and undersupported. Now, I know that you have a lot of problems that you're dealing with, but we have to get a hold on this morale problem because it's going to get worse if we don't. Now, how you're going to solve it, I don't know. I've got some suggestions if I could meet with some of you, but I would encourage you, I would challenge you, and I applaud you for what you did about NCAT, putting money aside, Mr. Thompson, Dr. Pruden, so that these folks could go to. I applaud you for that. I hope that in the next couple of months I can come back and applaud you for tackling this morale problem. Because as Mr. Gilbert said, low morale is going to affect everything that goes on in the school, from the janitors to the bus drivers to the principal. And we need to work on that. And I challenge you, I urge you to do that. The other thing I'd like to talk with you just a few seconds about is I was at the Sunset Beach Town Council meeting last night. And I talked with the mayor of Sunset Beach, and he was very pleased and proud of the fact that he has an internship program with West Brunswick High School. And I asked him for a few minutes about how this came about and what the kids were doing. And they come over to his town council, they work with his city employees, getting some on-the-job training. They do everything from landscaping to working in the office to answering the telephones. And I just think that is a great way to get our kids involved in the communities that they live in, to do some community service for the communities, but also give them the possibility of some on-the-job training for ready work when they graduate from high school. So, Dr. Pruden, I would just encourage you to talk with the principals of the other two high schools, see if they're interested in this interim program, and then have your workforce development officer in the county talk with those city councils and see if we couldn't work out some kind of an internship program. And I think that Sunset Beach is even going to hire these kids in the summertime. Right now, you know, it's cheap labor for them. But the main part is the kids are getting some on-the-job training and they're giving back to their communities. They're taking some ownership in their communities. So let me just encourage you to look into that program. I think it's a great program, and I think that our kids would benefit from this kind of program. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Mrs. Lorraine Williams.
Madam Chairwoman and members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Pruden, and associates as the bars. Good evening. First of all, I would like to congratulate those of you who were just named principals. Your appointment is daunting. It is a challenge, but you will enjoy it when you get to sleep past the headaches of the day. Working with children has been a joy to me for 35 years. I have come here, though, tonight, and I ask those of you who have been appointed to understand that this is not directly related to you, but to say to you, the board, as you face in the fall a declining budget, that's something that's going to happen to every school district in the state and probably the nation. I I would ask you to listen to the recommendations of your advanced education report in leadership and governance. Be proactive in planning your budgets. How can you assign 2 veteran principals to assistant principal positions without decreasing their salaries? When you do that, you have ultimately increased your budget for the coming year. You have taken money from the classroom, from the individual students, from their curriculum and educational budget. By expanding your administrative budget, I think a great deal of discussion and planning should have taken place, and I don't know that it didn't. But I know that by virtue of your actions, your budget has ultimately been increased. I would ask you to follow the recommendations of your advanced education report. Leadership and governance is where you fell down. And your action in expanding your budget in a year when the state and the feds will ultimately decrease it verifies why you did not meet that challenge. Thank you for allowing me this time. Good night.
Thank you. Under presentations, the approval of the meeting agenda. Excuse me.
Ms. Babson, may I please insert in the superintendent's discussion and announcements section a brief report on the measurable student outcomes from the past school year.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion to approve the meeting agenda with the addition by Dr. Pruden.
I'll take your motion, but I have one that I'd like to add to it, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't have anything here about rescheduling the superintendent's evaluation, and I think we need to talk about that tonight and do that. So would you amend it for that?
Yes, ma'am. I amend the motion.
Do I have a second?
Number 5, Madam Chair. Superintendent.
Yes, number 5. A second, anybody second?
I did.
Okay, Mr. Thompson second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion is carried. Consent items. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent items? I always miss those minutes for some reason. We'll go back to the minutes first. The July 10th, 2012 Board of Education regular meeting minutes. Do you hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion's carried. And next we'll have consent items. Do I hear a motion to approve consent items?
So moved.
Are there any consent items to be approved?
There are none.
I thought I saw some on the...
No, that's on the
There's not anything listed.
Don't see any, do we?
Okay, that's action items under that.
Okay, we don't need to do that then.
Ms. Babson?
All right. Yes.
I regret that I had 2 things I wanted to add to the agenda, but I only mentioned one. If I could have another few minutes to ask Ms. Laura Hunter to return to the microphone and introduce a proposal for a superintendent's teacher advisory committee. She's prepared to do that this evening, and we can stick that in the superintendent's announcement section.
Should it be there or the action? Do we need to take action?
I think it's more information. You're welcome to endorse it, but I think it's pretty much an informational item.
All right, and it's what, called what now?
Superintendent's Teacher Advisory Council.
All right. With those changes, and I'm mixed up now because we've done different things.
I make a motion to approve the meeting agenda with the revision of adding superintendent teacher advisory presentation.
I'll second.
Okay, that should do it.
Under superintendent and board members' announcements.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Okay, under action items, first is the policies on the second reading, asking us to requesting us to waiver the first readings. 3220 student promotion and accountability, 3460 graduation requirements, 4318 school uniforms.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. We do request waiver of first reading of these policies, and we can review each with you. The first two policies, 3420 and 3460, are technical corrections based on action of the State Board of Education. The first one being 3420, page 2, you will see the strike through of students who score at level 2 or below on the first administration of EOG test will be retested. The State Board of Education has actually rescinded the retesting requirement at this time for students, and therefore we are just aligning our policy to match what the State Board of Education requirements read. That is the only change to 3420 that's proposed.
All right, thank you. I'm trying, our attorney just handed me a note and said that we need to request waiver of the first reading. What we usually have done in our motion is, make a motion for approval and at the same time request waiver of first reading. I believe that'll be all right. Okay. Any other comments about the other two action items concerning policies?
Yes, ma'am. Just to clarify again, 3460 graduation requirements is simply an alignment with the State Board of Education requirements. And 4318 school uniforms. I wanted to give you a little background on why this particular policy is being brought to you for consideration for revision. The concern about the lack of flexibility in the uniform policy was actually brought forward to the 3 elementary principals on the northern end of the county. The 3 principals at the northern end met and came to consensus on what they felt would be a way to address the needs of the community as well as still maintain the uniform policy, but by adding a little flexibility in the language. So the rationale behind that was to allow flexibility, and also the 3 principals that did come to consensus on what you are seeing tonight recognize that students in the northern end of the county do have a high mobility rate. So the uniform colors specifically, and you'll see the requested change, that the colors of the shirts be allowed to be flexible so that if a student leaves Town Creek and transfers to Belleville, that they would not have to procedurally then repurchase shirts of the colors for Town Creek, Belleville, or Lincoln. So what you basically have under the uniform policy, under Section B, there's the removal of the language of the school uniform committee. Under Section C, there is the removal of the color and the addition of language that any color polo-style shirt be permitted. You'll see an omission that shirts must be of a solid color or striped at the middle schools, and another omission where shirts must be free of labels, graphics, or insignias of any kind except for the school insignia, replaced by shirts may have logos no larger than a quarter. Under Section 2, there is a revision to include shorts and the addition that they may be worn on Fridays. So a stipulation as to when they may be worn. Blue or black jeans may be worn on Fridays. You will see further down, the dresses may have the logos no larger than a quarter. That would align with the language of the shirts. And on page 4, under special events, you'll see the addition of jeans may be worn on Friday. Traditionally, it has been the discretion of the principal to allow jeans to be worn. Those typically have been tied into special events that were occurring at the school. Ms. Davis, do you have anything that you would like to add to the recommended changes to the policy?
I think the recommended changes would be a benefit to the parents as well as appreciated by the students. The flexibility in the shirt colors makes good sense to us as administrators, that it will be cost-saving for the parents. They wouldn't have to worry about a child who left Town Creek, as Ms. Swinski said, going to Lincoln or Belleville, trying to get another color shirt specifically for that school. And also when they feed into the middle school, especially those who feed into Legal Middle, and that would be all of the students at Belleville and Lincoln, and part of the students at Town Creek will feed into Legal Middle. Legal Middle already has a policy of any color shirt, so that would still be a cost-effective strategy for the middle school as well.
Yes.
I'd just like to say a couple of things. First of all, this has not gone to committee. This is the first time that I am seeing this in full color. So I don't think we should have I just have a real issue with this, because these things have not been addressed to the board. And if it says on somebody's website that the board has been looking into this, this is the first time I have seen this, given the information that's in front of me right now.
The request for the waiver of the first read was the fact that committees were canceled with the time sensitivity of the changes related.
But we still need to go through the same protocol. There's a lot of changes, and the uniform policy is very detailed, and you're just basically saying, we might as well just not have uniforms. If you're going to take the policy and just tear it apart and little it, and we might as well not have a uniform policy. I would have liked to see the whole county have the uniform policy when we did it, but we let the schools take a vote to say, I want it or I don't want it. If I'm of the opinion we should have the whole, it should be district-wide. And I didn't like the fact that it was just on the north end, but everybody voted and got their say, so the schools that voted to have it got it. Now, they got the policy that we put in force. Now, if you want to tear it apart, let's just not have a uniform policy. It's my opinion. I mean, if you're going to sit here and pick it apart and tear it up, there's no sense to even have a policy if you're going to, because then there's nothing uniform. You're just tearing the uniform apart to make everybody feel good and have what they want. So I suggest we send it back to committee, and that's just my recommendation as far as the reading, first reading.
I have a question. When will our committee meetings be for the month of August?
21st.
21st. Could we send it to that date and let board members know so they can all be there, and for the time sensitivity, and make a decision on that date at least? Would that work, you think?
Madam Chair, could I ask for an explanation of what you meant by time sensitivity?
The time sensitivity was just simply the fact that parents are currently school shopping for appropriate attire to align with the policies. So we were just being sensitive to that.
Could I also ask Ms. Swinski, you mentioned that the policies had been discussed and reviewed with the principals at each of the schools. It's also my understanding that the principals met with parents and had individual committees?
Actually, Mr. Thompson, the proposal before you came from the Belleville PTA to the principal at Belleville. She forwarded it to me, and I asked her to meet with all the other principals involved and to try to come to a consensus.
Okay.
So they all agreed basically with the proposal that that would work at their schools too. And I think that the statement on the website is, stay tuned, it's under the consideration of the board, but it didn't presume any action on the part of the board.
So my understanding then is that it is driven by parents for the most part.
Yes, they were asking for some flexibility.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we table this and send it back to committee on the 21st for discussion.
4318, school uniforms, not the other two, right? Right. Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And any more questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion is carried. All right, did you say no? Somebody say no? One? Okay, we have one no. Under 3420 and 3460, could I hear a motion that we go ahead and approve these two? Or do you think they ought to go back to committee first?
May I make one additional comment regarding those policies? Those must be aligned in our student handbooks. We are postponing printing of our student handbooks until we can align the correct language in accordance with the state standards. So that's just another piece of information.
Well, that would be according for school uniforms too, wouldn't it?
School uniforms, I think, technically are a part of our handbooks as well. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, anyway, what's the pleasure of the board? Would you like to go ahead and adopt these other two policies? Is there a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion to adopt 3420 as amended and 3460 as amended to align with statutory revisions by the General Assembly.
A second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion is carried.
Don't forget your waiver for first reading. Thank you.
Well, I thought we had done that, but anyway, could I have a motion on policies 3420 and 3460 to waiver the first reading?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to waive the first reading on the policies 3420 and 3460 and approve them
okay.
As amended. Yeah.
Okay, I hear a second.
Second.
We'll do it all over again.
Yes.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion is carried. All right, number 3, Health Department MOA. No, number 2 first, SRO contracts for traditional schools and early college high school.
I'm taking these for Mr. Grimes. We have 2 SRO contracts for renewal. One is with the Sheriff's Department for the elementary and, for the middle schools and high schools, 10 SROs and 1 DARE officer. And the other one is with the early college high school to provide SRO services there. These are continuing contracts that are no changes other than the dates from the previous year.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Ms. Cahill, this is just a regular yearly contract that we have. Nothing's changed in it.
That's correct.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the SRO contracts as presented with the traditional schools and early college.
I have a second. All in favor?
Madam Chair, I'd ask to be excused from this vote due to a conflict, please.
Okay. We'll excuse Mr. Biller. All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. This motion is carried. All right. Next is the Health Department MOA. Is this...
This, too, is a continuation contract from previous years.
Okay. Do you need any more information, Board, on this before we vote on it?
Well, Madam Chair, nothing has changed over the past year, and I assume that our legal counsel has reviewed it.
First time I've seen
Well, we can always put that to the next meeting.
That's just, it's a yearly thing.
If it's an annual MOA, Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the Health Department MOA as presented as an annual contract.
We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd ask that next year we make a point of getting it to the attorney prior to the meeting.
I agree with that.
Yes, sir. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. The motion's carried. Brunswick County Parks and Recreation MOA.
Make a motion to accept. That again is a continuation of our relationship with Brunswick County Park and Rec, and it has not changed in several years now.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion carried. Number 5, child nutrition contracts for bread, fresh produce, and milk.
I was expecting that Ms. Ward was going to be here tonight, but she was expecting...
She's here. She's in the back.
Oh, she is here. All right. Apparently it hasn't come yet. Ms. Ward, would you like to address it?
Basically, thank you very much. It's good to see all of you tonight. Basically, the milk and bread products had to be rebid this year because of the nutrition standards that have changed. That we do have some big changes coming this school year, and one was to increase all of our bread and grain products to whole grain, and we have done that. We sent the bid to 3 companies, received a bid from 2 companies, and the winning bid is for Franklin Baking, and they will be providing the bread to the school system this year. We included in this bid, which is allowable by USDA, a 4-year rollover clause, so that next year, when we take a look at bread again, we have the ability to roll that contract over with the same bread company, depending on how they have served us this coming year. The milk bid, which I think is after the produce bid, but the milk bid, we had to rebid milk because of the fact that, again, due to the new standards that we have as far as nutrition is concerned, we had a change in the fat content that we can have in flavored milks. We used to could have flavored milks that contain 1% milk fat. We can no longer have that. It has to be skim, and we will offer plain white milk at the 1% fat content and 0, which is skim. So that was a change that we had.
No chocolate?
We'll have chocolate skim milk, and we'll have strawberry skim milk, along with...
No wonder kids aren't eating in the lunchroom.
Well, you know what? Really, they are.
You got rid of the tater tots?
But can I put a little plug in here, if I may? We served over 2 million meals last year.
Well, they usually fill them full of sugar when they take the fat out.
Well, actually, they don't. They're considered low sugar, and when you look at it on a nutritional analysis, it really is a good choice for children, especially children who don't care for white milk. The calcium that's included in there is much more important than not giving them that milk at all, or them not having milk at all. The produce contract, which I'm really excited about, had to be rebid this year. Last year we participated with the Department of Defense, which does not have to be bid because of the fact that we are a federal program. And we chose to go with the Department of Defense last year, but we were not completely satisfied with the quality of the produce that we were receiving, so we decided to go ahead and rebid the contract. We sent it out to several produce companies, and we received 3 bids back. One of them, though, was disqualified because of the lateness. They didn't adhere to the time frame. And the company who received the produce bid is Honeycutt Produce out of Chadbourn. So we're really excited about that because Chadbourn is a close-by county, almost local, not completely local, but almost local. And they have been already working very closely with trying to set up the items that we have asked for, and it's awaiting approval this evening so that we can go ahead with these bids. The bid itself is based on the contract and the bid that the North Carolina Food Procurement Alliance has set forth. We do belong to that alliance. However, we decided to place the bid on our own because we wanted some other produce companies to participate. And so that's what we did. And with our produce bid, you'll notice that the bid price, the total price ended up at $99,538. That bid price does not include the escalation or de-escalation of the produce. What happens with produce is since produce is such a volatile product, fresh produce, we get weekly pricing on produce, and we can go through those prices and determine what we can order and what we can't order that fits within our budget. Additionally, something that we added to our produce contract this year is we decided, the Child Nutrition Department, and of course talking with Mr. Miley, that we would ask for them to give us contract pricing on 5 of our top items, which means we will have the same price throughout the school year on those items. One of them being apples, Red Delicious apples. And we knew going in, I had been reading a lot about what was happening in the produce industry, and we knew going in that the price of apples was going to be extremely volatile this year. And we got our Red Delicious apples. They will be, I don't have it in front of me, but it's somewhere in the ballpark of $26 to $28 a case for 120 count. And we just noticed that Gala apples in the same case size and count have already gone to $56 a case. And we're locked into that price. So we're really excited about that. It's something new that we had not done before. So we're very excited about that. And what I would ask that you do is to approve these bids as presented to you so that we can carry on with our school year this year.
All right, do you hear a motion to approve the child nutrition contracts? Second?
Second.
Any questions or?
Just real quickly, how did you get a rollover term with the bread contract again?
We do it with the milk as well. And in fact, we do it with the milk. We do it with almost all of our bids. We get there's a clause in the contract that is a rollover clause, and we're allowed to, by USDA, to add that clause into these contracts that the bid you can roll it 4 additional times to the year that you're bidding. So you can actually roll it over within 5 years. You give them the option. You also have an option where companies can come back to you one time a year and they can increase their service fee, but it can't exceed a certain amount. And if it does, then it's either it goes in for rebid.
Well, I'm just curious, what would trigger your decision, and I guess the decision would be made in your office about rolling over the contract? Would you?
Pricing.
It would all be about pricing, so that's a strong negotiating tool for you?
It is, and it's based on it's based on the Foods Away from Home Index that on pricing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and service.
And service.
Yes. With our produce bid, it's a cost plus fee, and that the fee itself is a fixed fee, so that cannot change.
But you bid it as a 1-year contract, but you have an option for 4 additional years?
That's correct.
So each year when it rolls over, the terms of that contract would be negotiated?
They can be.
For example, price increases that the provider has will obviously be something they want to put on the table.
Mm-hmm. And
okay.
we can also choose each year, should we decide not to do that, or at the pleasure of the board, if you decide that's not what you want us to do, we'll rebid a second year. I mean, or in years in the future too.
Any more questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried. Thank you, Ms. Ward.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think it's an appropriate time, since we're talking about cafeteria, Ms. Iris Bernard, who is a long-serving employee of ours, recently passed a couple weeks ago. She was the cafeteria manager at South High for several years, so I'd ask that we all remember her family in our prayers. She just retired a year or so ago, a couple years maybe. So.
Thank you for bringing that up, Charlie. All right, discussion, announcements by the superintendent and or board members.
Budget resolution.
Nope.
Well,
the biggie.
I'm leaving out a big one this time.
Scale about to drop out of receipt.
Let's go backward. Approval of the 2012-2013 budget resolution.
I have a short PowerPoint, and you should have a packet in front of you. We actually have some good news. Brunswick County Schools saw an increase in state and local funding, and also a reduction in the discretionary cut that we had to absorb. You'll see more about that in the coming slides. Schools also have more teachers next year in the classroom, including a specialized person in reading. And the state budget included a 1.2% pay increase for all state employees and 5 bonus days of annual leave. So those are kind of the highlights. Trend analysis of the budget. This shows 5 years. If you look back to 2009, the state budget was $61 million. And then in 2010, it dropped to 56. And then in 2011, 57, and 2012, 59, to where we're up to 61 again in 2013. So from 61 back to 61 over a 5 year span for state.
You want to speak to what happened with the federal edu jobs?
Yes.
At that point, I think that's a good place to insert that.
Well, the federal line, you'll see in 2010, there was a spike up from 7.9 to 16 million. That's when we saw the ARA and the EduJobs funding come into play, right at the same time that the state funding was being decreased. And so then when you jump ahead to 2013, you see we only have 6 million of federal funding. And so this is how we've been able to, because we received additional state funding, we were able to absorb the positions that back in 2010 were moved into federal. And that's where you see later on where the 27 positions from EduJobs have been placed back into the state and local budget. Overall, with the 3 fundings, well, actually, I shouldn't skip over local. You'll see an increase in local from 2009 to 2013. 2009 was 33 million, and in 2013, it's 35 million. The next slide just shows the data in a different way. You see overall our budget was higher in 2010, and then in a couple of years we had a slight dip, and then a slight increase in 2013. And again, a good part of that is as a result of not having to send back as much as initially intended in this discretionary reduction. The county appropriation, you see in 2013, the change amount, we received an additional $1 million over the prior year for a change percentage of 3.3%. You see the trend over since 2008. 2008 and 2012 were both re-eval years, and so you typically would see a spike in those years. And we are coming to the end of our agreement, and so we will be talking with the county latter part of the year to renew our contract. Fund balance analysis. In June 30th, 2011, we had an unassigned balance of 8.4 million or 8.5. Then during the year, 1.9 million or 2.2 million was appropriated to both for carryover programs and also for the one-time bonus that was given to employees in December, which left us with an adjusted fund balance of 6.5 million. Then we're expecting, and this is just estimated because this is pending the audit, we're expecting to increase fund balance by 2.7 million, which will leave us at June 30th, 2012 with 9.1 million. And you'll see later in the presentation that the one-time bonus again for 2013 is on for discussion on the budget summary. And if that is funded, then the estimated remaining fund balance would be 7 million.
Ms. Cahill, where does the 2.7 excess come from? Where's that?
Both in maximization with the state and local funding is part of it, just getting the most bang for our buck with state dollars. You saw several months ago where the state allowed you to some ABC flexibility with their state funding, and we gained from that. So we were able to put money into fund balance from maximizing those state dollars. And also just general savings. Anywhere, we don't...
Would you say pinching pennies?
We
don't spend it all.
All the budget holders have been very careful with their expenditures, and that 2.7 million, a large part of that is a whole school system trying to save money. And so if the board were to approve the one-time bonus that is suggested, in essence, you are rewarding the employees with money that they help to save.
Just to talk a little bit more about fund balance, the recommended amount to maintain is, in your fund balance, is 2 months of operating expenses, and which would be approximately $5 million. So even if we were to appropriate that $2 million, we would still have $7 million remaining in fund balance. And as a reminder, fund balance, and I say this every time we talk about fund balance, should be used for one-time, non-recurring items. We still have charter school litigation that's ongoing, and that financial exposure is not known yet, so we do have to keep that into consideration. And also, due to the shrinking capital outlay funding sources, fund balance, might be necessary to sustain those programs. So those are just kind of caveats to fund balance. The next slide, we have you have a full page of that, where you can see a little bit better. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. The audience probably still can't see this. This is the same sheet that we talked about last time the budget was presented, with some changes. The first line shows the revenue changes, and you see that the 1.046 million increase from the county. When you first talked about the budget, it was 800,000, so that did jump. There's a strike through in the indirect cost charged to child nutrition. That revenue, we're leaving in child nutrition because it wasn't needed to balance the budget this year. The state raise, 1.2%, is included in this budget.
Is that for all state employees, including teachers?
Yes, ma'am. Everybody.
Okay. Everybody.
All employees. The retirement rate did go up almost 1%, but that's no different. I'm going to jump down to the discretionary reduction item. The last time we talked, we were anticipating having to return 4.1 million or 4.15 million, and we in fact only had to return 2.9, almost 3 million. So that provided...
Ms. Cahill, I have a question about the textbooks. Mm-hmm. Are you going to mention about the textbooks? What is it, the recommended fund balance appropriation when ready? Have the textbooks not been ordered yet?
Ms. Dixon talked about that, I think, at the last curriculum meeting. They're not ready to order textbooks yet because the curriculum isn't finished at the state level. I mean, the books aren't ready to be...
Is that what DPI has to tell us what books to order?
They give us a list to select from, an approved list, and with the change to the new Common Core curriculum, they're running a little behind in preparing those lists.
Well, it's my understanding that the publishing companies are holding off on that too, because of the changing curriculum.
It kind of defeats the purpose, though, to get the textbooks during the middle of the school year, I would think.
But they'll be getting it for a 5-year cycle at that point.
Well, Mr. Thorson, you're right, but I would say that textbooks are not the essential tool that they once were. Our teachers have many sources and tools with which to teach children, textbooks being one, but much of the information is online and created by teachers and periodicals. So the instructional program won't suffer, and we'll get the textbooks when the publishing companies and DPI have caught up. But we're moving on.
So that $900,000 is a lot less than what we've had in the past for textbooks. If we're going to eventually phase out of textbooks.
In years past, we had a pretty healthy allotment from the state. And so that has been cut slowly but surely. And in fact, it's very, very small now. And so we've not had to have local funding supplement it until now.
I do think it's predictable over time. We will use fewer large paper textbooks, but we will still be purchasing textbooks that our students can access online. The advantage of those being that you can update them overnight with new scientific discoveries or historical events. They're, in real time, whereas a book is a fixed product. But we'll be using textbooks in maybe e-form, electronic form, and more in the future.
We'll have self-correcting books as well.
And moving on to the library books, who chooses which books go in the library? Does each individual school, whether it be elementary, middle, or high school, get to choose which ones go in?
It's a committee, isn't it?
It's a library committee, the principal, the librarian, parents, teachers participate in that process. And schools do have some flexibility there.
Has that cost gone down? Has the cost of library books, has that cost gone down any?
I'm not sure.
I wouldn't think so. I think we need to keep adding.
Is that what we designate each year for library books?
The schools get a instructional supply allocation, and they designate a certain amount of that to library books, but we've also done, at the central office level for the past few years, a big order to supplement those.
As part of our reading initiative, we studied our libraries, and they were understocked, and they had many old texts and books that were no longer relevant. We've done some cleaning house, and we've ordered some newer, more up-to-date and relevant materials for our students.
Okay. I'm going to skip down to where it says various. The items on the top are the same as what we've talked about last time. But when we get to the various, you'll see that the classified pay table adjustments, last time we talked, we had a proposal that was 3 phases of implementing to adjust the classified pay table. We're actually able to fund phase 1 and 2 in this setup that we have, to where the pay table is adjusted for child nutrition workers, custodians, and phase 2 included teacher assistants, and they now have been included in this as well.
Bus drivers, anything?
Bus drivers, yes.
Bus
really,
drivers in phase 1.
Right.
Yeah.
They were in phase 1. So we were able to do phase 1 and 2. So all of the classified adjustments that were being proposed are being done this year. And we're stopping at grade 58. So it went through teacher assistants.
Yeah, what percentage is that?
Well,
for 8 steps. That's 8 steps to go moving up, right?
Well, yes. But each of the tables was changing, and
just an
grade
average.
50 got the most, because that was an area that was lacking the most. And those would be your child nutrition workers. But really, we see an increase of anywhere from $20 to $80 a week, depending on the grade. I'm saying a month.
Okay. Is the 1.2% going to be on top of the new grade?
That's correct.
Okay. So they'll get more?
Yes.
Okay.
Could you remind us what phase 3 is?
That would be to adjust the supplement schedule, particularly for the teachers is the biggest bulk of that. We will be bringing back to the board next year, hopefully, to move away from the scaled effect to make it a percentage. Right now, the average is a 7%. And after they reach certain years, they move into the next bracket. By putting it into a percentage, that's better for the employee, because as they get pay raises, their supplement will increase as well. So we will be recommending that it goes up to 8%, which puts us somewhat in line with our neighboring counties. In that New Hanover, their current percentage is 7%, which is in line with where we are now. Onslow County teacher supplement is 10%. Moore County is 8%, Columbus 3.5%, Bladen 4%, Pender 6%. So that puts us in a good ballpark there.
What is New Hanover?
7.
Could you give me an estimate of what the value of Phase 3 is in terms of its impact on our budget?
800.
A recurring cost will be $542,000. And 350 of that is with teachers. 50 of that would be for teachers.
Oh, right.
Because that's the biggest bulk of our employees in that. So that would be Phase 2 to come next year.
Phase 3?
Well, right, Phase 3 if we combine 1 and 2.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're changing up your numbers on me there.
Moving on, Program 56, the transportation bell schedule, we've added back in the $520,000 that was subtracted out last year. Parent facilitators, we're adding 5.5 positions to the budget, a half a position per elementary school and 1 position for the K-8 school.
Ms. Cahill, I got a question about that. If, say, an elementary school, not the K-8 school, but another one, has identified some funds to where they can fund half of that position, and if we fund the other half, well, can they make that their full-time position? I mean, if they've come up with the money within their budget, and then we fund it the other half, then that should be able to make a full-time, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, we have the history of doing that with our APs for months of employment, right? They've been funding some extra months of employment at the school level.
Computer Tech 2, with the amount of technology funding that the district is funding, there's a need for another technology technician. The assistant principal's 3 months of employment. This is where each high school will get 1 month of employment for the summer months, for that 11th to 12th month, and the principal will decide how to divide that up. They've been doing it for years and years. They've just been using their general fund in order to fund it, and then paying us back. The next one, staff development. This is the line where we see the NCAT. We've put aside $10,000 for that program. And then Avid and other supplies are really supplies that we've already been funding, but with federal sources, and we're moving them from federal to local. So not new things, just changing funding sources. The literacy program materials. This is to provide materials for the district-wide reading initiative, including what the new reading teachers will need to move their program forward. The next item is to maintain the social workers, nurses, and bus coordinators. These are positions that were on the cut list last year, but there were people in those positions, and so the board voted to keep those positions funded with fund balance, and we're now proposing that those be placed back into the budget as recurring items. And the last item, reading teachers. There are 14 positions there. Title I will pay for the elementary, and state funds will pay for the middle school, for a total of 38 positions being put back into the budget in the proposed.
Ms. Cahill, those reading teachers are in place already? Have they been hired?
Some of them.
How many of those reading teachers have been hired?
I think there's 13 of the 14.
Madam Chair, if I could, I'd like to ask, maybe put Dr. Pruden on the spot a little bit. In looking at the summary of budget request, it's apparent that, to me, as a board member, that it would be very valuable to me if I knew or had a bit of an executive summary. What is the administration trying to achieve here? For example, we just spoke about 14 reading positions. Well, that's the first time that we had heard about it as a board, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, Mr. Thompson, our reading initiative is one of our primary focuses for last year, and it will continue for a number of years into the future. Our goal was to get our reading score system-wide up to 90% of our students proficient in reading, and we improved by about 1 percentage point. I'm going to show you some data in a few minutes, but we did not have the increase this year that we hoped for with our Today a Reader, Tomorrow a Leader program and asking parents to read 20 minutes and all that, and with our emphasis in each class that every teacher is a teacher of reading. We got a little improvement, but not what we were looking for. And what we've decided to do is to place in each elementary and middle school a reading specialist to work with all of the other teachers on enhancing our students' reading skills, because we believe it's the gateway skill to all other subjects and skills.
Well, reading was just one example, but for example, what I would like in an executive summary is how your budget recommendations achieve our strategic objectives. You've just linked reading and reading improvement to the budget, and I think that's what I'd like to see. But obviously there are other consistencies with our overall district strategic objectives, and I'd like to just sort of let you, if you wouldn't mind, in the
Our
future.
overall goals are always safety first, then academic improvement, being an effective school system that teaches our children a grade level worth of knowledge each year or more. And then our third goal is always a high quality of daily life for all of the persons associated with our schools, students, teachers, the nutritional folk, the bus drivers, such that they don't return because we have a compulsory attendance law, but they return because they want to, because they are pleasant places to work and learn. So some of these are maintenance items, library books, textbooks you'll find from year to year. And while the Board of Commissioners and the state have been very generous, as they could be, in funding us during the economic downturn, we've had to make some tough choices. For example, success coaches was on the list, and it's something we would like to do very much. And that's one of the tough choices, something that didn't make the cut this year that we'd like to see in the future. But our three overall goals every year are safety, being an effective system of teaching and learning, and being a high quality of daily life for everyone associated with the system.
Well, I think it would help me, and I'm sure it would help our general audience at any time, to hear how our budget is going to reflect our strategies for the upcoming year. And I think it's significant that we're adding 38 positions. But I'd also remind everyone that the 27 positions that were previously funded by EduJobs, we didn't go out and hire 27 people with federal dollars. Those were people already working in the system. Yes. And the state lowered our state funding and supplanted with federal funding. That's how they became federal positions.
Exactly.
Now the federal dollars have run out, and the legislature has tried to put us back up, but we're just now receiving some degree of parity with where we were in 2009. The 61 million is about the same. But that was an experiment in one-time money. True. But we have fortunately been able to cover that. But you will often hear people talk about not hiring people with one-time money. Well, we didn't have a choice.
That's true. Thank you.
Could you talk more into the speaker, Hunter?
Item.
So.
It's on. I'll just talk a little louder. Is to discuss a non-recurring supplement for employees, which would be given of $1,000, which would be given in December.
I'd like to ask the board, are you ready to vote on this tonight, or this is the first time we've seen some of it?
Madam Chair, I wonder if we might get, hear from Ms. Cahill on the nature of the urgency of a budget resolution, because I believe she needs to have some information ready to go for August.
We had intended to discuss this with the board July 24th. And so with the August payrolls, we are kind of in a time crunch to implement some of these things that are on the
all right, well, it's up to the board. If you're comfortable with it, it's fine.
What I would say is, if it's possible, we get together maybe in the next 5 to 7 days. Would that fall within the window of acceptability for your needs? If we could have a meeting within the next week to talk about budget issues? Well, you tell us how much time you have, and we'll try to see if we can work around it.
To change, if we could come back tomorrow or the next day, or
Yesterday.
line by line approve a few things like those pay increases. I'm not sure if we'd be allowed to do that.
No.
But we are in the processing mode of payroll right now for August, and some of the classified pay table adjustments, we really can't do that until the board approves those. So depending on what the board wanted us to do in preparation for the next meeting, just as soon as possible. I mean, that's where I need to leave that.
We're going to set up another time for a board retreat, and we're also going to talk about the superintendent's evaluation. That's going to have to be soon, I'm sure, before the next board meeting. So it might, we probably could work it in with that amount of time, I would think.
It's not going to hold up the employees getting a raise, though, right?
It could if we don't get the information quickly enough.
So can we move forward with the raise, just the raise part?
That's what she was saying.
You can't do that?
Well, I wonder if, would it be irregular if we adopted the budget resolution and then came back and amended it with any changes that we wanted to make?
You have to ask somebody else that.
The resolution is in total by fund. So long as you would be in agreement with the total amount, then we could move some stuff within. But if you were going to take off any of these things that that we're proposing that are salary related, that might be problematic.
Sure.
All right.
If we could make or if I could make a motion to accept the budget as presented, but table the discussion which is pending for the bonuses that you've got estimated at $2,100,000, but approve the budget less that item, which is not listed with these other figures. It's a separate item, is my understanding.
That's correct.
If I could make a motion to approve the existing budget without that allocation and have that for future discussion.
Could I ask a question? Would the intent of your motion be that we continue and have a meeting and consider making adjustments to the resolution?
Just that one item.
You're saying adopt all aspects of the budget except the $2,100 from fund balance for bonuses.
All right, I just think it's a little early to make a decision on that. $2 million.
Well,
that would not happen until December anyway, if it was approved. It's an employee bonus.
Oh, yeah.
It's an employee bonus like we did last year.
But it wouldn't have to wait. I mean, a bonus can be any time. It can be
approved tonight. Could be.
But the point of continuing discussion was to address, I think, issues that board members might have on a variety of line items. Is that what I understand?
I just asked a question. I know we like to discuss these things more at length than we have tonight, usually, but, you know, it's up to the board.
Well, if I could.
Well, I guess I'll retract my motion.
No, don't do that.
Well, it's still on the table, so it's still on the floor, I guess.
Well, the only thing that I would like to consider, and you sort of successfully tied my hands with your motion, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. Under classified pay table adjustments, the funded phases 1 and 2 of 3, I would like us to consider going 1, 2, and 3 this year, even though Ms. Cahill will say, well, you should not do that because you're using one-time money from fund balance for recurring expenses. But I would point out to the board that the total of the bonuses is approximately $2.1 million. The one-time, the pay supplement adjustment is about $500,000. That covers us 4 years. That's pretty good. So I think maybe it's good advice not to fund recurring expenses with one-time fund balance, but in this case, it might be smart to do it early. And your motion prevented me from doing that, see?
My question would be, we've hired another 38 positions, and if we don't approve a budget, does these 38 positions start when school starts within the next 2 weeks? Do they get paid?
Some of them have not been hired. I don't think the computer tech has been posted. Parent facilitators.
Some of them has not started yet.
That's correct.
So they would not be employed until we get the budget passed.
Right, we wouldn't hire any more positions.
And our school, the staff comes back when? And that would include these 38 people.
We have a motion on the floor. What was your motion?
To accept the budget recommendations, excluding the fund balance recommendation for the bonus.
Do I hear a second?
I second with discussion that, and the discussion would be that, of course, we bring this back up as soon as possible for the bonus. That maybe within the next meeting that we have, we bring that up to discuss.
Go ahead, Mr.
I understand exactly what John said, because I had the same question today when I met with Finance and Dr. Pruden and Ms. Hunter. I mean, I know you want $1,000 and you deserve it, but if you take and go ahead and do what John says now, that $2.1 million is going to cover us for 4 years on the increase of the supplement. After that, I mean, there's not a guarantee that next year you'll get a $1,000 bonus. But if we do this, if we were to change it to the supplement increase, you're going to get that until you retire. And, you know, it's reoccurring every year. So you go well past, after 2 years, you go past the $1,000 mark. So in the long run, it's beneficial to increase the supplement versus a $1,000 bonus. Now, I'm for, you know, if other members don't want to do that, I'm for either way, but long-term thinking is the supplement's the way to go. I mean, they're going to get more money in the long run that way.
Which would be a reoccurring expense.
Right, it's a reoccurring. And they're proposing $1,000 this year, and the reoccurring starting next year, because we've got other reasons we need to get that down. But
if I could, I'd like to say one more reason that I wanted to maybe consider leaving, modifying the motion a little bit, but I'd like to be able to move some of our current fund balance onto or into the capital side, because we really don't have the funding sources there that we historically have had. The state funding is gone. Right now, we're relying on the arrangement with the county commissioners, which is generous and beneficial, and the state lottery system, but that's not enough for our capital needs. So I'd like to move a couple of million from our general fund balance over to the capital side. And I'm not sure that I could do that under your motion.
Well, let's make a motion about what we're going to do.
We have to deal with.
We haven't voted on, I mean, her motion didn't get a second.
Seconded.
I seconded it.
Oh.
But following up with what Mr. Thompson said, I'm not sure I want to discuss that yet until we can go and maybe finance and have a discussion about that, because I want to hear a little bit more details about $2 million. How much is that going to help us in the capital outlay? I mean,
That's 2 more roofs.
But I still want to have a discussion on that. I hope you don't put that as an amendment to your motion.
It's not my motion.
Okay. Well.
But if we past that, or could we still come back and visit the 3, of the phases if we decide, or is that once we vote? We can go back and change it if we wanted to. Couldn't we?
Let me ask the board something.
You can always add, but you can't take away.
Okay.
Can we schedule the retreat for August the 15th, Wednesday, August the 15th, and finish this up then?
Well, I'd ask Ms. Cahill, is that adequate time?
Yeah, well, let's do that, okay? You've got plenty of time to think between now and then, and we can go ahead and make the decision that night.
Are you asking Ms. Cook to withdraw her motion?
I'll vote against it.
Well, you can just...
One question, Ms. Babson. If we have a board retreat on the 15th and consider the budget, Ms. Cahill, will that give you enough time to prepare the payroll? Okay.
All right, so you still want us to vote on your motion, or do you want to retract it?
I'll rescind it.
Okay.
I'll rescind.
All right, so we will...
Do I need a second on that?
I don't think we have to do anything except just rescind it.
Okay. I'll back you up.
So we're going to meet August the 15th, and I suppose the time and the place will be sent to us. And we will finalize our discussion on the budget, make a decision as be part of our retreat. All right. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. All right. Thank you. No, not yet.
Thanks. I'm ready to go.
Now we have discussion and announcement. All right, you have your committee meetings, the dates and times for those, and August 15th for the board retreat. Do you think that we can do the superintendent's evaluation the same day? Do you think?
On what day?
On August the 15th.
It's going to be a long day.
Well, how about August the 21st when we do the...
I think Dr. Meadows wanted us to have a special meeting on committee day too, right? Could we consider incorporating?
That was for human resource nominations. That is correct.
What day was that?
Committee day, the 21st.
I'll be going out of town starting the 22nd through the 26th.
So you missed committee?
No, I'll be here on the 21st.
Oh, that would be perfect then. Yeah.
The retreat was intended to be a day-long event, and if you have the budget consideration, which could take an hour or two, our consultant to come in and help us facilitate our study of the advanced ed report, and the superintendent's evaluation in the afternoon. That's a better part of a day.
Mm-hmm.
On the 15th.
On the 15th. Yeah.
And replaces the day that we weren't able.
I'm supposed to be out of town on the 15th, but I can see if I can go late.
All right.
But we'll
go ahead.
That's okay.
Okay, then number 4, I'm going to skip that one. We don't have to have number 6. Let me see what I'm adding. Teachers, events.
Student evaluations.
What do you have for number? Was the superintendent evaluation on number 6 or number 5?
That was the student outcomes.
Yeah, on number 5, student outcomes. I might have got superintendent. Okay. Number 4 was a report on measurable student outcomes. So we'll just go ahead and do that right now. That's going to take a few minutes, I think.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins, do you have that loaded already?
Yes, sir.
Is Ms. Hunter's presentation also loaded? Would the board mind if Ms. Hunter went first? And then I'll do the report. Would you like to go ahead?
All right. Well, very quickly, in the past we have had a superintendent teacher advisory group for reasons that are outside of my scope of understanding. That went away. And so I've been working with Dr. Pruden with the idea of bringing that back as a possibility, and he has agreed. So the purpose here is to give teachers an opportunity to step up as teacher leaders in the county and work with Dr. Pruden and his cabinet to have ongoing dialogue about what they're seeing on the ground as teachers in the classroom. So we are working on communication and leadership, and this is an opportunity to give teachers an opportunity to develop their professional voice by communicating directly with cabinet members about curriculum rollout, about what's going on within the school walls. The idea behind the council is that they will meet once a month from August through June with the superintendent and his cabinet at a location to be determined by the group that is most convenient. At the beginning of the year, we'll decide on the list of goals to help guide the purpose of that particular council. The idea here is to have open, honest, solutions-oriented communication. Brunswick County Schools teachers are great problem solvers and would be a wonderful tool to tap into as we move forward with a lot of the new vision that we are rolling out this year. I really would love for this particular council to meet at minimum annually with the Board of Education to provide an ongoing open dialogue between the Board of Education and classroom teachers in Brunswick County. I'm not entirely sure Brunswick County school teachers know what the Board of Education does on a regular basis. And while we like to think that you guys know what we do in our classroom, that is not always the case either. So open communication across the board would be, I think, of benefit to all stakeholders here. The council will be made up of one representative from each of the 19 elementary, middle, and high schools in Brunswick County. My preference would be that the teacher of year at each of the 19 schools would be a member of the council. I understand that that's not always the case. So if the teacher of the year is not able to serve, I propose that the faculty at each of those schools elects the member to serve on the council. And leadership will be a shared responsibility between Dr. Pruden and this year myself. As we move forward, the teacher of the year for the county steps up into that leadership role to help craft and move forward with a vision for that council and to help facilitate that dialogue. That's it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hunter. I appreciate that well-crafted proposal. And members of the board, as Ms. Hunter mentioned, there have been advisory councils in Brunswick County's history, and for some reason it lapsed. But under her leadership and with my enthusiastic cooperation, I think it would make us a stronger school system if we enacted that proposal and get us a monthly opportunity, provide us a monthly opportunity to talk between administration and teachers, and also another avenue for teachers and board interaction and participation.
If you would let us know, we might want to attend occasionally.
Please. We will let you know, and the invitation is open.
I'm glad to hear that, because I think it ought to be three-way. I really do. So the board, the superintendent, the teachers will all know where we're coming from.
Maybe more than once a year, too.
Well, he's talking about when they have their meetings for welcome too. But yes, I think at least once or twice a year we should just have all the teachers of the year to come, or the NCAA leaders to come together with us. So we're going to make some effort to do that this coming year. But thank you.
Thank you.
Now let me see. I've got all these things mixed up.
Measurable student outcomes.
Okay, that's the fifth one.
And board members, at this time, I'd like to present you with a brief report card on our measurable student outcomes for the last school year. You know, Brunswick County Schools, we call ourselves a community of learners because all of us, not just the students, but teachers and principals and central office folks and board members, we are actually a community of lifelong learners. The educational landscape is changing. As you have heard on numerous occasions, we have the new standard course of study for North Carolina. North Carolina is one of 46 states that have adopted the Common Core. This is a voluntary collaboration of states. It's not a federally driven curriculum, and the purpose is to help our students nationwide become more competitive in the global marketplace. This is the first time in 30 years that we will have a new curriculum in place for all subjects at all grade levels. The Common Core standards in English, language, arts, and math, and North Carolina essential standards in the other subjects. Part of our College and Career Ready, Set, Go initiative that is associated with our Race to the Top grant, DPI refers to it as READY. That's the word they have adopted, College and Career Ready, and we have heightened standards for students and staff, which segues to the new accountability model, which we will pilot this coming year with full implementation in 13-14, heightened performance standards for teachers and principals, and 3 years of student outcomes will be a component of teacher evaluations in the future. So North Carolina is a leader in many of these innovations. Let me share some accountability data with you, grades 3 through 8. First of all, AYP, adequate yearly progress, that we've been talking about under No Child Left Behind, has been replaced by AMO's, annual measurable objectives. That's because North Carolina received the waiver from the Federal Department of Education under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And you might recall with AYP there was one standard for all kids, and the school either made it in every subgroup or did not make adequate yearly progress, and it was a very difficult standard, one size fits all. AMOs are a little more flexible in that the targets are based on student subgroups' past performance. So it is a growth model, one that will show whether or not we're improving the performance of each of those subgroups, but we can recognize progress and not just have one target for everybody. Now some specific school outcomes. This is our elementary graph. Belleville Elementary School, first of all, that growth column, this is where we report the North Carolina ABC's outcome, and schools either meet expected growth or met high growth or did not meet their growth target as a school. So Belleville did not meet the growth target. Their overall performance at about 81%. But a nice bump in their reading score, 3.6%, and up 1 point in math. Belleville, please note, did make the cut score in 19 of 19 AMO subgroups. Bolivia did not make growth. Overall performance, 78.42. 2% improvement in reading and 3.7, nearly 4% improvement in math, and 13 out of 13 AMO subgroups. Jessie May Monroe did not meet the overall growth target. Their composite score was 75.59. They experienced nearly 11-point decline in their reading score and 9.3 decline in their math score. They achieved in 20 of 21 of the AMO target groups. Lincoln Elementary School, high growth. Their overall performance of 79.84 and 1.4 improvement in reading and a 5.5-point bump in their math score, and were successful in 20 of 21 subgroups. Southport Elementary did not meet the growth target, 79% overall performance. They declined in the reading score by 3.4% and a slight decrease in math at 0.7 of a point. AMO 11 out of 13 subgroups. Supply Elementary did not meet growth. Their overall performance was 68.29, slight increase in reading at 1.5, and a handsome 7-point jump in their math score, successful in 18 of 19 AMO targets. Town Creek Elementary met growth. Their overall performance at 79%, slight loss of 1 point in reading and 1.5 points in math, made 13 out of 13 AMO targets. Union, high growth. Now this is interesting, board members. I'd like to point out that Union, with our overall performance rating at 92.11%, that is our highest performing elementary school, and yet they met high growth. And you often hear folks say, well, it's hard to improve when you're at the top. There's not that much room for improvement. But Union has shown that you can be a high-performing school and still meet high growth. So we don't want to just say, well, you know, there's something in the water out there that they just do well every year. That's hard work on the part of the students and teachers and parental support. And you see a 5.2% increase in reading and 3.1 in math, 13 out of 13 target groups. Virginia Williamson did not meet the growth target. They're at 73% overall composite and minus 3.7 in reading and 7 in math. 16 of 21 targets. Waccamaw School, this is the elementary component. They met their growth standard. Overall performance composite is 84%, down 1.5 points in reading and up 1 point in math, and 21 out of 21 AMO subgroups. So all things considered, board members, I have to be honest with you, this is a disappointing performance at the elementary level because statewide, 80% of our schools, 80%, 4 out of 5 made growth. And that is, you would expect students to make a year's growth in a year's time, and you would expect a school to make a year's growth in a year's time. So that's disappointing that we had 6 of our elementary schools did not make growth last year. 2 with high growth and 2 met growth and 6 did not. The middle school performance. If you will notice for the growth ABC standard that 4 of the schools met growth and South Brunswick High School had high growth. So all of our middle schools had at least meeting the growth standard. And you can see the overall performance composite scores there. In reading, Cedar Grove up 3.4 and no change in math, 17 out of 21 subgroups. Leland Middle School, flat scores basically in reading and math, 25 of 29 target groups. Shallotte Middle, down almost 3 points in math and basically flat in reading, 22 of 25 targets. South Brunswick, high growth, composite 84.62 and up almost 1 point in reading and a dip of nearly 3 points in math, 20 of 21 targets. And Waccamaw, this is the middle school component, grades 6, 7, and 8, down 1.5 points in reading, up 1 point in math, and 21 of 21 target groups. This bar graph helps us to see what we call the gaps. The bottom line where it says all students, this is our grades 3 through 8 reading % proficient at or above grade level. So 74.1% of our students grades 3 through 8 are proficient in reading. But you can see the different ethnic subgroups there. And what we want to see is everybody's score improving, but we also want to see the gaps closing so that all of our students, regardless of which subgroup they're in, are making the same kind of progress. This is the grade 3 through 8 math graph, and if you'll see at the bottom, all students, 83.7% of our grade 3 through 8 math students were proficient. And once again, you can see we have some gaps. We will work harder with our students with disabilities, limited English proficiency, minority groups. You can see the gaps there. This graph shows the white line represents Brunswick County and the green line represents the AMO target. And what you can see is there for all students in grades 3 through 8, we made some progress, slight progress in our reading score, and it is right at the AMO target. And in math, basically flat, maybe up a point, and also pretty much contiguous with the AMO target line. Okay, let's look at some high school data. Brunswick Academy, their growth percentage hasn't been computed by DPI yet. They made 1 out of their 3 AMO target groups. The graduation rate of 58.5 is down by 8%, but it went up 26% last year. So they still are moving in the right direction with that. Early college, high school, another example of a school that is high performing, making high growth, all 10 of their target groups, and the graduation rate increased by nearly 4% last year. North Brunswick High School met their growth target, 19 out of 20 subgroups, and their graduation rate of 89.5 is nearly a 5-point increase over the year before. South Brunswick High School, high growth, 16 out of 16 AMO targets. Their graduation rate of 90.5 is a 10% improvement over the year before. Very handsome. And West Brunswick, high growth, 17 out of 20 targets. 84.7 graduation rate is a 6-point improvement. And let me remind you that last year they had a 4-point graduation improvement. So for the last 2 years, West Brunswick has gone up 10 points. And last year, South went up 10 points. North went up 5 this year. Early college up 4. And BCA is improving there as well over time. So that's really something that we can be proud of. This shows our grade 10 reading proficiency, and notice the bottom line there, all students in grade 10, 88% are proficient at or above grade level. That's what we want for Brunswick County schools, 90%. That's our target, and we're at 88% there at the 10th grade level. You can see the gaps there. And the next one is our 10th grade math. And at the bottom there, all students 80.3% proficient. You can see some gaps. And this overlays the county white line there with the green AMO target line, and you can see that for 10th grade countywide, our students jumped. See, look at that graph, 80 to almost 90, up to 88. That's what we wanted to see for Brunswick County this year. Countywide, it was about a 1% increase, but at the 10th grade level, that's a very handsome 8-point jump, and we closed the gap on the AMO target there. And on the right-hand side in math, we had a decline, and that's something we've got to look at the data and strategize how we're going to turn that one around. Big picture, Brunswick County schools. Our vision is a community of well-educated, employable, and socially responsible citizens, and our purpose or mission is to produce college and career-ready high school graduates. So here are our big scores, if you will. We made 64 out of 71 AMO target goals, or 90%. 74.1% of our students, grades 3 through 8, are proficient in reading. which is up by 1 point, and 83.7% of students grades 3 through 8 are proficient in math, up 1/3 of a point. Please notice that handsome graph there going upward with our graduation rate over a 5-year period, up from 72 to nearly 84%. And look at this information, BCS graduation rates by subgroup. If you look at the top line, all students, 83.8% graduation rate. Notice that for our males at 81 and females 86.5. That's a piece of data that we're going to have some conversations about. There is no reason why the girls should be graduating 5.5% higher rate than the young men. Also, I'd call your attention to the white graduation rate of 82.8% and the African American graduation rate of 86.9%. I actually had a reporter from one of the local media outlets call me the other day and ask why that is. And I speculated that, to be honest, perhaps the expectation of graduation from high school and attendance at college might be a little stronger in the African American community right now than in the white community by 4 or 5%. So it's not to label any one group as all or nothing, but it's interesting to see that some of the subgroups that we might consider in need of closing a gap are actually ahead in some of our gap analyses. But we're proud of our 83.8 overall percentage, and it will go up every year. Notice also that our dropout rate, this is the one graph we like to see going down instead of up, and over a 5-year period it's gone down consistently from 5% down to 3.5. The state dropout rate is 3.47, so we're within 3/100ths of a point of the state dropout rate. So once again, we're asking our parents to read with their children, read to or with their children, grades K through 12, 20 minutes a day. It makes a difference because today a reader, tomorrow a leader. And we remain focused on just a few pillars of school improvement: our reading initiative, our professional learning communities where teachers collaborate on what's working and what is not working in our classrooms, our pyramid of instruction and intervention so that we know what to do when students are not being successful, and positive behavior intervention supports, which helps us to create a more positive environment in each school for teaching and for learning. We are committed to continuous improvement. Some of the data you've seen tonight is encouraging, some is challenging, and we acknowledge both. And for those things that are working, we're going to continue those, and for those that aren't, we're going to see why not and work on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I believe that's all except for our executive session. Before we have that, I'd like to take a moment personally, if I might, with you. If it looks like I've been a little distracted tonight, I have, and I just ask for your prayers. I thought I could say this. My husband of 54 years has terminal cancer, and I just ask for your prayers. Thank you. We need a motion for executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carried.
Take a little break, Ms. Shirley.
And we'll take a 10-minute break.